What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully everyone is having a great day and enjoying late winter or early spring, depending on where you live. It's 86 degrees here in Scottsdale today. Took off my hat. God, I'm pretty bald. I tell Maria all the time I might have to go to Turkey and get implants. You never know. So one day you might see me and I might just have a full head of hair. So keep an eye for that. But as we sit here on this beautiful Wednesday, you're probably watching this on a Thursday. I do want to dive into some information coming out of 49er land. John Lynch, because Kyle Shanahan refuses to go to the combine, gave us some insight to some different things. I ended up last night, which would have been Tuesday night, watching like 40 minutes on my phone in bed. Sean McVay talk to Ryan Fitzpatrick and Andrew Whitworth, and it was one of the better, more candid coaching interviews you will ever see, giving a current situation that is probably the story of the NFL right now with Matt Stafford. So I will dive into some thoughts on Sean McVay, and then we'll hit on a bunch of other stuff today. So, this is the last day for the coaches and the GMs to talk. Now, granted, they will talk on NFL Network with DJ and Rich, and I saw McAfee's in Indianapolis, so other guys will do some interviews. But just in terms of formal interviews with the press, whenever you say the press, it sounds so like 1980. With people that talk and report and write about football, that's over. So that's a cool thing about the NFL. I remember, was it a couple weeks ago? And granted, I mean, it's one of the biggest trades in the history of sports. When Luka got traded to the Lakers, everyone's like, the NBA is stealing the NFL shine during Super Bowl week. And the NFL has a few more curveballs up their sleeve because the combine is just content out of thin air. It's like, yeah, let's just go to Indianapolis, have a bunch of guys work out, and basically make every GM talk, and ideally every coach will talk, and not everyone does, but we got a lot of good content out of these guys talking, which felt a little like the season because they kind of go into hibernation then till free agency, and then they will do some formal. Every coach and GM has to talk before the draft as well, so we'll hear from them a couple more times before late April. But this is a fun time of year for those of us that love the draft, that love transactions, that love the drama. I think the NFL does a good job of balancing the games. The main thing is the main thing, and the drama, which is important, player movement, free agency, as being a piece of the puzzle, a big piece of the puzzle. I mean, it carries them through several months in the offseason before we get to OTAs, which pretty boring. Even if you attend them, I've attended OTAs for 15 plus years. You by about 15 minutes in, you're excited to see some football, and then you're like, "Can I go to the golf course?" I would think that if I was working for the team or covering the team. I do want to start with John Lynch, who, like I said, I do think it's a major mistake for any head coach, and Kyle's not alone. It's been reported that 26 or 27 of the head coaches are there. But I do believe that every head coach should go to this event because there is importance. And you can do your busy work, evaluating free agents, catching up on the draft, and other stuff in your hotel room. Like, Andy Reid is not hitting the bars at night. Like, he's working there as well as doing formal interviews and going to the workouts. So my stance on that will never change. And this isn't the quote unquote scout in me. It's just, if you told me, hey, the volume has a sales convention, and it's not mandatory, but hey, if you want to come, we would love to see you there. We think it's going to be pretty important. We're going to have a lot of people that invest and advertise on our platforms. It's like, oh, where is it? And they'd be like, well, it's halfway across the country. And I'd go, well, who's going? Well, Colin and Shannon Sharp are going to be there. Do you know what I do? I'd be like, yeah, I should probably go. It'd probably be a good idea. And if the guy that's been to 5 Super Bowls in 6 years and is heading straight to the Hall of Fame goes every single year, you should probably go. I mean, you just should. And McVay, I don't know why him and Kyle just do not value this thing. I think they don't like the gossiping nature of it. There is a lot of people talking to each other, and they're not that into that, getting going out at night. But still, like, you don't have to do that. Like, I promise you this, like, Andy Reid's not shutting down the bars. Neither was Bill Belichick. But there just is value here. Now, it is the general manager is leading the charge during this event. Just like during the season, the head coach is leading the charge. And John Lynch hit the podium today representing the 49ers. And he said some, I would say, pretty enlightening things. Now, I've said for a while, the arguing, I had no problem having a strong opinion of, like, I would not give Tua money. 150, 180 million dollars. I thought giving Trevor Lawrence $200 million is one of the most insane things in the history of sports. It's like, you're going to give him $200 million guaranteed? Are we living in the same world? Now, Brock Purdy, I understand where they're coming from. They have won a ton of games with the guy. They have seen him make huge plays in big playoff games. So, unlike Tua, who got whatever, 160, 170 million dollars, or even Jordan Love, who had only excelled in 8 games and won 1 playoff game, I understood their view on the guy. Right? They had won playoff games with Brock Purdy. 4, if memory serves me correct. So, you could go into a game and win when 40, 50 million people are watching, and if you lose, you get eliminated. And I think the difference between the AFC and the NFC is pretty big, because in the AFC, it's harder. Why? Some of the greatest quarterback talents we've ever seen. I mean, Mahomes is already, he's like not even 30, and we already consider him not just a top 5 quarterback, but like, is he the second best quarterback of all time? Like, if it goes Brady, Montana, is he third? I mean, that's where we're talking. And Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are just rattling off MVPs. And if it wasn't for one of the best quarterbacks of all time, one of those two would probably have a Super Bowl. Potentially both of them would have a Super Bowl. I mean, it's really that simple. And Joe Burrow, who missed the playoffs, is one of the best quarterbacks in recent memory. The guy's a fucking stud. Now, I think Jim Harbaugh can be a little hyperbolic, and he said today that Herbert has a chance to be one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. Not like in the league right now, but like ever. But that's kind of how Jim talks. But he's not wrong. Like, I would expect Herbert to have a lot of success under Jim Harbaugh. All those guys are in the AFC. And in the NFC, like, let's face it. Now, Jaden, can he keep it up? We'll see. It's going to be hard. I would bet on it. But, like, he's done it 1 year. We saw C.J. Stroud, quote-unquote, regress. But when you look at the guys having the most success, Jared Goff and Jalen Hurts, I think they have something in common with what the 49ers have excelled at with their team. They built up the team around their quarterback. Jalen makes a ton of money. Jared Goff makes a ton of money. They are on loaded teams. And it is a lot easier to excel when you have a lot of talent around you. That's why this argument, like, is it the system? Is it the player? Is it like, what would he look like on a shitty team? Well, they're not on a shitty team. Jalen Hurts gets to play with A.J. Brown, gets to play with Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. Oh, yeah, and Saquon Barkley in the best offensive line in the league. He gets that. And through that, they win a ton of games. They just won the Super Bowl. Honestly, they probably should have 2 in 3 years, right? Jared Goff, if it wasn't for some of the craziest injury luck we've ever seen, they probably would have been in the NFC Championship against the Eagles. Now, even healthy, I don't think it's a lock they win that game. Obviously, the Eagles are super loaded, but that's what we're talking about. And the 49ers, when healthy a year ago, like, they were the equivalent. Loaded team around a quarterback who's really good and proven you can win with, and proven you can win in the playoffs. So to me, the pressure, like, he's getting paid. So the argument, like, should they pay him or not? They're paying him. John Lynch said, we're already in contract negotiations. Honestly, they had, decided to pay him last year after the Super Bowl. Like, this was a done deal because the way the season ended wasn't great. But they'll just chalk it up. Injuries, other luck. Kyle Shanahan wasn't good. But to me, the pressure now is on John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. It just is. Just like the moment they paid Jalen Hurts, the pressure was on Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman. And those guys answered the bell. Just like the moment you go all in on Jared Goff, and they did a couple years ago, and you stick with them and you're going to ride it out, the pressure's on the coach and the GM. And what did Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell do? They answered the bell. They coached well and they built up a good team. So it's like Kyle has to look at last season like that can't happen again. You have to be much better in the red zone. You have to be more innovative. Like you can't just, well, this worked 7 years. We got to change. Defensively, you've already gone and got more aggressive and got Robert Saleh. Good move. Ownership deserves credit too because he's making, rumors are right there with Fangio, one of the highest paid defensive coordinators in the NFL, if not the highest. And now you have the 11th pick. And this is my issue with Kyle not being there. It's one thing if like you had just lost the game a couple weeks ago. It's like you're picking 32nd. Your GM scouts can handle that. You got to figure out some stuff. You've been off since early January. Like it's pretty important for you. And every coach that was asked this yesterday, because like I mentioned on the podcast, Grant Cohn, who him and Kyle butt heads, he's going around asking every coach why you're here, basically running a bit, taking shots at Kyle. And I would say all of them, especially the older coaches, said it's to meet the guys. And meeting these players is important. When you have the 11th pick, you could trade up a couple spots and be in pick 7, pick 8, pick 9. You could trade back a couple spots and go 14, 15. But like whoever you're going to pick has to be a good player. If you want to continue winning, you have to hit on this pick. There is no way around it. There is no like, well, we'll keep our fingers. This has to hit if you're going to sustain winning. It just has to happen. And there's a ton of pressure. So to me, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, like that's who the pressure's on. If Brock Purdy just keeps playing like he's been playing, it's, he is what he is. And you understand that. Now, can he incrementally get better? Of course. And to me, there was some decision-making this season which he can't have because he can't play like that. He is not skilled like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Patrick Mahomes. He has to be an elite decision-maker. He has to be a guy that doesn't make mistakes. Obviously, over the course of the season, you're going to make mistakes, but in a tie game in the fourth quarter, I can't throw a pick. When we're down 5 points in the fourth quarter, I'm not allowed to throw a pick. We will lose the game. And that's what happened last season. John Lynch also acknowledged Deebo Samuel. He has asked for a change of scenery, start fresh. And he answered, we plan on honoring that. So Deebo Samuel, which all signs pointed to, it's unofficial now, will not be a 49er in 2025. I think the question mark is, will they have to cut him? Because I don't think there's a guarantee that they can trade him. Now, I do think there are enough teams around the NFL with cap space that go, here's the one thing with Deebo. He has proven in big games, in big moments, to be a fucking war daddy. Now, is he the same player that he was a couple years ago? Based on 2024, he was not. But if I'm a team and I want to, I would say, bring in a winning presence, a guy who knows what it's like to win, a guy who knows what it's like to compete at the highest level, and a guy who knows what's expected of a team starting in August through late January, I do think he has some value. Now, when I say has some value, I'm talking a 5th or a 6th round pick. And I would wonder, based on his contract, like, is anyone giving him $20 million next year? Because if he was just cut, and what would his market be? I don't think it would sniff that based on the way he played. But I do think there are enough teams with cap space who are just trying to be not just productive, but like instill a winning culture. And listen, Deebo can drive you nuts or whatever, but like Kyle does really like him. And still, like I was just talking to Deebo at the airport when we were flying out to the Super Bowl. Deebo really likes Kyle. Like they have a good relationship. And it's not easy to play for Kyle Shanahan, especially on offense at wide receiver, which, people think of Kyle Shanahan quarterback. Actually, his baby is the wide receiver. Ask anyone around the 49ers, like, it's really, really difficult to get on the field as a young wide receiver. And once you prove yourself, like, there's a high standard of physical play and blocking. So I do think if you're a team with some late round picks and you have the cap space, I don't think it's crazy to bring him on just to show some of your young players, like, this is what it takes. And this physically is what you need to play like if you want to win big games. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are. With the all-new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From dunks to assists to rebounds, get behind your favorite player and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like picking how many points your favorite player will have. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook and make your first pick. First time? Here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN, that's code JOHN, for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. There was another story yesterday that Brian Griese, it looked like he had been fired, and then it was reported, and I asked around. I think it's pretty clear. One, I'll never understand a guy who's really, really rich, especially a former player, who gets into broadcasting, where if you're calling games, you're working once a week, right? And Brian Griese for a long time was calling college games, and then he became, for I think it was a year or two, the Monday Night Football, him, Lewis, and was it Steve Levy, did Monday Night Football. But you're working once a week. And, you're doing Monday Night Football, you're making 7 figs. So you're a rich guy. And then you transition to coaching. Well, if you're a quarterback coach, you're making decent money. Let's just say $700,000, $800,000. So you're a top, 2% or 1%er in America with that job. But that's not your typical $800,000 job. You are working during the season, I would say closer to 100 hours than 80. And the one consistent theme, and Matt Barrows, who covers the Niners, was like the hours were pretty overwhelming. He was asked to interview for the Jets job, and he turned it down. And John Lynch mentioned this today. He thought it would be disingenuous to take a job when he didn't plan on coaching. But I do admire anyone who's willing to take that plunge, because this guy had been around football his whole life. Even if you don't quite know what coaching entails, you got a pretty good idea. And he did it for a couple years, made it to a Super Bowl, and then he realized, I'm out, and he quit. And Mike Lombardi, who's Belichick's GM, son, will be the quarterback coach. But Brian Griese was one of the driving forces during the draft process for Brock Purdy. He was a huge fan, and I think, I don't want to say the number one reason, but it's definitely played a factor of a guy pounding the table to draft this player. And, obviously this is a guy that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch now say we want around as long as we're around. A lot of times during, I don't want to say controversial, but very public potential trades, contract negotiations, coaches and executives, whether it be during the season, in press conferences, definitely at the combine, are just very close to the vest and treat them like they're nuclear secrets, even though we get it. This guy wants more money. Even if the average fan, or I would say 99.9% of fans, can't relate to negotiating contracts for $100, $200 million. We've been watching sports long enough, and we understand the push and pull of just basic things of building a team. You can only pay so many guys. I think most fans understand it. Sean McVay, who went on Whitworth and Fitzpatrick's podcast, was as open and candid in a situation regarding a Super Bowl champion, star quarterback who has been a big reason the Rams post-Goff, I would say, took a pretty big step and became true yearly Super Bowl contenders. Because unlike him going to the Lions and resurrecting his career, their team is not nearly as deep or as good. And Matt Stafford, at a point in time over the last couple of years, has played like a top 5 quarterback. And down the stretch, and Sean McVay mentioned this, he's 5-2 as the Rams quarterback in the playoffs. And those 2 losses, last year against the Lions and this year against the Eagles, was not Matt Stafford's fault. He played winning football. So he played and did well enough to basically be 7-0. And most people are not in the business of breaking up with those people. But as Sean McVay says, this is complicated. They love the guy. They want him to be their quarterback. But this is a business. And can we afford to pay a guy who's 37 years old, who I would say has a lot of wear and tear, even at his age, given how he had the shit kicked out of him, not just with the Rams, but over the course of his career, and who is told, and McVay mentioned this, kind of goes year to year. And I understand where Matt Stafford's coming from. And you hear a lot of players like, I want respect. And I get it. But it's like, bro, you've made $360 million. So when I see that the Giants and the Raiders are very, very interested, and I don't blame those two teams for being interested. If I were those two teams, as long as I don't have to give up my first round pick, I'd gladly give up my second round pick, give you a couple years, $100 million, guarantee every penny. You are such a massive upgrade for me, and just give me a chance to win. But if I'm Matt Stafford, I'm going to leave the Rams when, like, clearly they will keep me. I'm just going to have to take quote unquote a pay cut. It's like, Middlekauff, it's easy for you to say take a pay cut. Well, yeah, if I had made $360 million, I would be thinking about, and I'm 37 years old, like, how do I win another championship? That's all Brady ever thought about. How do I win another championship? And he just kept rattling them off. Even Patrick Mahomes, it's been widely reported like he took one of the great, he kind of took a hometown discount, and it has benefited the Chiefs over the years. And Matt Stafford, who's just obsessed with like, I need more money than Jared Goff, which we get it. You are a better player, but it's like, okay, you're going to go to the fucking Giants? Like, that's what you want to do? Go to the Giants? And it was reported today by Jordan Schultz that Brady took him skiing, that they hung out at the Yellowstone Club, which I've never been, would love to go to. It's where a lot of celebrities and elites like Tom Brady are members. It's basically a year-round country club. During the summer, it's an unreal golf course. During the winter, you have your own private ski resort. A lot of actors, actresses, like bigwigs, guys like Brady. And, you know, clearly there is some muddy water of like, have the Rams granted him the ability to meet with other people? You know, Florio's loves this story more than anyone humanly possible could. That like, is this tampering? Like, listen, this is fucking business. They granted him the chance to talk with other people. Matt Stafford's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He probably vacations at the Yellowstone Club too. And if you're Tom Brady, of course you want Matt Stafford there. And if you're the Raiders, I think you would gladly give up your second round pick and give him 2 years, $110 million. I don't even think you would hesitate. If you are, and listen, I'm a huge John Spytek guy. How could you not be a big fan of Pete Carroll? Like, they have real people running this organization. But that team isn't close to good. And if Matt Stafford for an extra, I don't know, $20, $30 million, and listen, that's a lot of money, especially when you factor in no state income taxes. But it's been reported, and McVay's like, I don't want him to leave. Like, obviously, if the price, we can figure it out. I want him to stay. But we got a number, and we're not budget, which I really appreciate. Like, we all get it. We all get the elephant in the room. Like, the Rams aren't giving him $100 million. And even McVay says, like, he understands that we understand that he's more valuable than what we're offering. But, like, we can't build our team and offer him this at his age. It doesn't make business sense. It's not good business. I give the Rams a ton of credit. Like, this is our number. We're not budging. We not only really value you, we love you. We know we need you to win. But, like, we can't cut that price. We don't think it's good business. And at the end of the day, this is a business. I think everyone's like, you got it. No, you don't have to do it. Even though, like, I think Matt Stafford's a stud. I think he's a Hall of Fame talent. But he has a chance to me to solidify a Hall of Fame career, stay with the Rams for a couple more years, make a couple more NFC Championship games. No one will say anything. You go to the Raiders, definitely the Giants, and all of a sudden you win 6 or 7 games the last couple years. Well, awesome. You made an extra $20, $30 million, but like you went back to irrelevancy. I just don't get it. And I appreciate McVay. And I also appreciate McVay talked about like how much he regrets how he handled the Jared Goff situation, where it got very public of his disdain for Jared and his limitations. And it was a bad look for McVay. And clearly he's going the opposite approach here. Now, it's easier. Stafford's a better player and they won a Super Bowl together, but I think it was a bad look. And McVay acknowledged that. And I also think he acknowledged something else, which I'm telling you, if you get a chance, it was just a fantastic, like 30, 40-minute stretch of McVay talking. That he talked about a couple years ago when they were having that terrible season and they didn't have their first round pick. That was the year Stafford was hurt and the Lions were getting it. Ended up beating the 6th pick. And a lot of rumors were that McVay wasn't just going to quit. He was going to take the Amazon job, which Amazon was going to pay him like $15, $16 million. So he went from working 100-hour weeks to go work once a week for probably the same money And it's not like he was flying Southwest. He would fly a private jet everywhere he went. It would be a very, very cushy job that paid a premium and would still get to kind of wet his beak talking football, being around football, interacting with football guys. And within 3 or 4 years, he could easily transition back. And he essentially said, like, I kind of had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, don't be a pussy. You don't get to just lose and run. And he was about to have a son, and he said, like, how could I look my son in the eye and say, times got tough? Because losing was hard on Sean. It clearly was. It's why he wanted to tap out. Like, I'm not doing it. And he didn't. And I think the NFL is better off for it that he stayed in coaching. And obviously the Rams are. I watched that thing and think Sean McVay is just, I mean, I already thought it, just an absolute stud. Can I tell you about my friends at Mando? They've taken care of me for a long time now. And listen, it's Arizona. It gets really hot, and I get very sweaty. And that's where my friends at Mando, they come in with the deodorant wipes. How about the deodorant spray? And just the whole body deodorant that you just put a little bit on. You can put it under your pitch. You can put it on your arms. You can put it on your balls. And I cannot recommend it enough. It's clinically proven to block odor all day. No one wants to smell. Created by a doctor, all products, baking soda, free. So clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap. How do you beat that? 12 hours after a shower, you're still smelling good. I cannot recommend these guys enough. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick of deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes. Love those wipes. And free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off starter pack using the code JOHN, that's JOHN, at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Okay, Aaron Rodgers. I was talking to a buddy the other day who lives in the Bay Area, very good friend. And he's in the tech world. And some of these companies, when I graduated, and I've told this story before, in 2008, probably should have graduated in 2007, but a lot of people I went to college with graduated from 2007 to 2009 range. And the tech boom, Silicon Valley, was really taking off like a rocket ship at that point in time. Now, the country was about to go into this financial and in a financial recession, but that area was kind of loading up like a rocket ship and shooting right to the moon. So I knew a lot of people, some of them friends, some of them just acquaintances, that got jobs at these companies pretty early on. So like they weren't like employee 5 at Facebook, but they were in quote unquote early. And so when you look 15, 18 years later, some of these people are W-2 employees in the Bay Area making on the low end 500 grand, and some of these people are making over 7 figures. Well, I heard some stories about layoffs, and obviously as these companies are trimming down, whether it be Facebook or you name it, Oracle, and well, who do they come after first? Like, wait, we pay you $950,000. It's kind of Doge. I mean, that's why Doge is it's business people are doing it, right? That's how businesses think. Like, do we need you? What type of revenue do you generate? And I heard these stories about like 2 or 3 people getting fired that were making a ton of money. And I asked my buddy, I said, what are they going to do? How is that person, even though they get a severance for, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, how are they ever going to find a job that pays that again? And he's like, they're not. They're completely fucked. I mean, one person was like an HR director. It's like another was like a recruiter. It's like, well, in a year, AI could be doing all this. Like, you're in major trouble. And it's going to be it's not humbling now because you get a huge severance. You're living pretty well. But in 6 months, it could be extremely enlightening to some of these people what is actually out there at the price points that they're used to being paid. And it kind of made me think of Aaron Rodgers because for a long time, Aaron Rodgers was just viewed as like one of the great players of all time. He was viewed as a quarterback that every single team, beside the team that had Tom Brady or maybe Peyton Manning in their prime, would have kicked their quarterback to the curb and taking Aaron Rodgers in a New York minute. And listen, I do believe this. He's one of the best players I have ever seen. But then you age and things get weird. And now all of a sudden there are reports of Aaron Rodgers reaching out to teams. People probably forget this, but Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos in 2016. His arm looked like mine or yours. He could barely throw. And he had his neck issues again, and he had just been banged up going back to Indy. It felt like it was cropping back up, and his body was betraying him. But he didn't want to retire, and he started reaching out to teams. There were reports that summer and seeing if anyone was interested, and no one was. Now, Aaron Rodgers is better right now in early or late February 2025 than that version of Peyton Manning. But people are not lined up for him. He is a second choice, a third choice. He is not choice number one. He is not on a free agency board the guy with the top sticker. Matt Stafford, which is crazy because for a long period of time, Matt Stafford was viewed as like the poor man's Aaron Rodgers. Well, kind of poor man's Brett Favre, but is now every team that is interested in a quarterback are discussing Matt Stafford before Aaron Rodgers. And I mentioned this to Colin the other day, and a lot of people say that if the Rams and Matt Stafford aren't able to figure it out, that Aaron Rodgers would be the replacement. I do think there's a dramatic difference between the two players. And even McVay talked about this. And this was a Greg Cosell way to describe a quarterback sitting in the pocket, staring down the gun barrel and delivering a strike, aka throwing the ball and completing a pass to a wide receiver as you are about to get destroyed by a defensive lineman or a linebacker. Aaron Rodgers will not do that anymore. Tom Brady the last year would not do that anymore. Matt Stafford, one of the things he hangs his hat on still as a player is the ability to do that. And to me, that with a great player is typically like you get to a point, you become so rich and you get older. And let's face it, I mean, your injuries don't go away as quick and pains hurt a little bit more. You don't want to get hit like that if you can't avoid it. And Matt Stafford still has no problem sitting in there. I would say the best in the league, right? I mean, Joe Burrow is elite at that. Now, that's why he takes a lot of hits because he will sit in there till the last possible second. It ended Andrew Luck's career early because he refused to not stay there the last possible second for the guy to get an extra step and get open. And it's a quality that separates the men from the boys at the highest level. And I think there would be a dramatic drop off. Now, I understand if you get Stafford, if Stafford's costing you $55 million, you get Aaron Rodgers for 12 and you get draft picks. Like you got to factor in a lot of things, but there would be a major dip at the quarterback position when you just factor in plays like that. And that might just be a couple throws a game over the course of a season. It might not be, it's not like it's 100, but it's enough in big spots in the second half of tie games. That's the difference of winning and losing. So if you're a 10, 11 win team, it's easy to go to 8, 9 wins because he's not willing to do that. And Rodgers used to be willing and definitely had the capability to like get rid of it fast enough to avoid, like those days are over and we saw it. The Saints, Mickey Loomis said today that he believes we can win with Derek Carr. And if they keep Derek Carr this year, he will make $40 million. I think Derek has kind of looked like a shell of himself for a couple years now. And he was a pretty polarizing player when he was just, I guess, quote unquote, in his prime. Gets injured a lot now. But if you're the Saints with all your cap issues, it's not crazy. Like this year, if it kind of goes well and you're competitive and you got a chance to like compete for a wild card spot or depending on how many games it takes to win that division, you're like in the mix in December, that's a huge win. If you have a terrible year, who cares? Got a new coaching staff, kind of start over and figure it out from there. But, Derek like Cousins are two guys with a combined one playoff win and just a handful of playoff appearances that when it's all said and done are going to make a combined. I looked based on the end of last year, have made a combined $500 million. Derek's made 200 and Cousins has made 300. Now, if you add an extra, Cousins getting another 27, Derek's getting another 40, you're talking close to $600 million between the two of them. Pretty nuts, man. Really is pretty nuts. Good to play quarterback in the NFL during this era. There's never been a time in the history of the world that it's better to play pro sports. We see all the time in the NBA guys getting $45 million a year. You're like, this guy is not even all NBA. You see mid-tier quarterbacks now making 40, $50 million a year. So you talk about right timing. These guys are very lucky to be born when they were born. I saw this story today. I'm not going to break down the NFLPA grades about most of the coaches, actually. I mean, I felt like 90% of the league got an A or a B at coach. So if you didn't, like I saw Stefanski got a C, Doug Peterson's got a C. Some guys got the Patriots got a bad grade. For your owner to Woody Johnson received an F. This is all the teams. The NFLPA gives out a survey, and I don't exactly know how it's administered. I think it's during the season, and players just give you a letter grade. And the Jets and Woody Johnson, he got an F. Woody Johnson got an F. Guys like Robert Kraft, Michael Bidwell, the Rooneys, David Tepper, all got D's and D minuses. I do think it's pretty embarrassing if you're an owner. You don't talk to the team really. Your name, I guess, is a signature on the check, but all these guys get direct deposits. You don't really even interact with the players that often. For you to get an F, even a D, that's pretty bad. I don't really have like some hot take beside how's that even possible? You are paying, like if you're the Rooneys, think how many guys on that team you are paying a ton of money to. You would just think like, hey, just like them. Now I saw Albert Breer say he thinks a lot of it's tied to some of these franchises have like old uh, facilities, and these guys come from college. You know, if you come from LSU or Oregon or Texas or whatever, you're used to a nice facility. I don't know if it's just that, and maybe it is, but if I'm Woody Johnson and go, I got an F, like the Jets have a nice facility. It's not like 40 years old. I think they built it in like 2011 or 10 or 13 or it's I think less than 15 years old. And Woody Johnson got an F. How often has like Sauce Gardner or Garrett Wilson or Brees Hall talked to Woody Johnson over the last couple of years? If I had to guess, it I'd probably go under 10. Maybe on the high end, some of these guys under 20. Man, sucks for these guys. Okay, welcome to Chasing Challenges. Brought to you by Microsoft. In the NFL, just like the business world, overcoming obstacles is the key to success. Microsoft empowers business decision makers with AI solutions, simplified cloud data, and data management with trustworthy, responsible technology to turn challenges into opportunities. In this segment, we'll explore some of the biggest challenges being faced in the NFL and how they can be overcome. Whatever challenges you're facing, Microsoft empowers you with the expertise to say, bring it on. This week, we're discussing the challenge faced by all these NFL teams. Like I said, I do believe it's very, very valuable for the head coach, for the GM, for the coordinators, for your high level scouting execs to not only be around guys that you're going to draft really high, but interact with them, get to know them, ask them any questions you may have on or off the field. I do think you have to be very, very careful, though, to not overvalue a negative interaction, something that for whatever reason doesn't go well, or the opposite, an interaction that is just incredible and you fall in love in a 20-minute speed date. Because when you're going to draft a guy in the first round, especially some of these teams, right, that are drafting really, really high, you're investing very, very valuable draft equity and draft capital into this individual. And if you hit, you get a star at a relatively cheap price. Even if you draft him in the top five, they're making $6, $7, $8 million a year. Well, if he's a Pro Bowler, it's an incredible deal. But I do think let's face it, interviewing any person in any line of work, and people listening to this or watching this are in all sorts of industries. It's hard. You're dealing with human beings. But when you're dealing with a young person in a situation like this where there is millions of dollars on the line, not only you're going to try to be on your best behavior, but you might not act how you would normally act. Now, scouts and people through that work for the NFL teams have gone through the school and accumulated information, but if the information you have says, this guy's not a great guy, and then you meet him and it's like, he's on his best behavior. Like, I kind of like this guy. We're all like that. How many times in life do you hear a story about someone like, my buddy hates this guy, said he's just a bad human, and then you meet him at a business function, at a social setting? I kind of like this guy. I mean, I really enjoyed, we had a beer together and it was very enjoyable. It's no different at the scouting combine, that it's like, well, my scouts are crushing them. I talked to him in the private meeting we had with him. I saw him in the hallway. I saw him again at lunch. I was like, this guy's growing on me. And I think you got to take everything at the combine in terms of personal interaction when it comes to these college guys very, very carefully. Because we always get into this once the season starts, like, well, this guy can't play. Well, it's like, yeah, he was average on tape. Or it's like, God, how did this guy fall to the third round? It's like, well, his tape was good. And it's no different with physical characteristics. Some people aren't going to look as good as others. Some people are going to look incredible. Just because you look like Trent Williams, right, or Jalen Carter, or some of these great players, doesn't mean you play like them. And that's the problem at the combine, is no football is actually being played. It's all in shorts, t-shirts. Everyone's on their best behavior. Everyone's got a smile. And sometimes a guy that's a high character, great guy, can be exhausted. They have been there for days. They're getting up at the crack of dawn every day, getting taken to medical, P tests, NFLPA, all over. You're just exhausted. Your season ended, especially if you're on a decent team. Early January, you went right to training somewhere where you don't live, in Arizona and Texas and Vegas and Florida. You've been grinding. You've been away from your family and friends. You've been with people you don't really know that well. You just got a lot going on. So I just think overall, you got to be very, very careful in these situations to make any just judgments in your head or about an individual as a group that might be off. I would just say be very, very open-minded with everything. So that's it for this week's Chasing Challenges. Remember, Microsoft's AI solutions empower you to take bold steps and make informed decisions, sparking new ideas to help drive your business forward. With Microsoft as your trusted partner, you can navigate your journey with confidence, finding innovative solutions and reaching new possibilities. Visit Microsoft.com/challengers to learn more. Visit Microsoft.com/challengers to learn more.